Emuparadise, a popular ROM distribution site, has removed all of the ROMs from its website, and the rumor is that it might be Nintendo behind it.
Hot take!
Popular ROM website destination Emuparadise has removed all of the ROMs from its website. Now, this isn't the first we've heard of this. There's also been a couple of other websites that have recently removed their ROMs, but specifically those other websites were due to the interference of Nintendo.
Yeah, right. So on July 19th, Nintendo started seeking legal action. So you may have heard that Nintendo is very aggressive with taking down things that they feel are infringing on the rights of the company, but this is like super duper aggressive. So whereas in the past, when they've kind of went after ROM sites, it's been more of a cease and desist. But now they're actually seeking legal action. So yes, on July 19th, they started seeking a lot of money from two websites in particular. That was Love ROMs and Love Retro, both of which are no longer doing what they did before.
Yeah. So the way this would work is if you were sent a cease and desist, you would stop, but that wouldn't stop other people from uploading ROMs themselves on different websites. Now, the reason why a suit is a lot more scarier is because that can actually tell a message to all the other people that would be doing this to go, oh, so I'm actually going to lose money if I do this, or I'm going to be out of, like, well-being.
Right. So seeking a lawsuit like this, it's just one step away from getting a lot of cash from these websites. So Nintendo was actually seeking $150,000 US per title that was on these sites, and they were also seeking $2 million for infringement on Nintendo, like the trademark in itself. So it's a lot of money, and these ROM websites that Nintendo had gone after, they weren't, the creators weren't extremely well known. They were pretty little guys. So yeah, it's kind of sending a message out to maybe some of the other sites, some of the bigger sites, that hey, stop doing this with our games, or you're going to be having some severe money issues.
Yeah, now there was a point in time when there was this basic kind of understanding for online emulation and ROM distribution that there was this way that people would treat it. Now, early on in the days when you went to go download a ROM from a website, they would tell you can only keep it for like 72 hours or something like that.
It varied everywhere, right?
Yeah, right?
Like there's these rules, and like none of them were...
You can only download the game if you own the game already.
Right. Yeah. Technically, there is some legal gray area where, like, if you own the game and it's your copy and you dump your version of the game, there's some sort of legal precedent for you.
Yeah, but that wasn't real. Okay. Here's the reality of the situation. Now, neither Adam or I are lawyers. We're not in the legal trade or craft. We do not understand.
Shane, you're not a lawyer?
Yeah, but what we do know is a couple of things, and the one thing is IP, or intellectual property, can include code, it can include images, include titles, all that kind of stuff. You can't distribute that unless you have the rights from the original holder of the product. So anytime a ROM was available on a website and it was distributed without the original IP owner's say, that was illegal. It's simple as that. That's how it goes.
Some of these websites went even further into distributing and being able to make use of these ROMs. Like, I believe it was Love ROMs or Love Retro actually had an emulator built into the website. So you could literally, like, you didn't even really have to grab anything and finagle it into working on your computer. You could just play it right in a browser, which is like super simple, which is another reason why I think Nintendo really dug in with these websites. Yeah, man, but it's all kind of... It's weird, man.
Now let's just begin and get some bad stuff out of the way first. Now, Nintendo going after these companies is definitely a message being sent so that they can close down a bunch of other ROM websites. Now, this is something that's a little bit a bit of a mixed feel for me, at least. ROM websites, Emuparadise, we're going to use them as the example for this. Emuparadise had a lot of ROMs on there and ISOs of modern games that are still actively available, games you can purchase right now, and that is basically illegal. They sent this message out to everybody on their website that stated a whole bunch of things, including how it brought people back enjoying retro games and stuff like that, and people look fondly upon the website, which is true. But there's also this idea that you were distributing stuff you didn't own. So there's a very legal precedent. But they did write this here.
Right. Okay. So they wrote in sort of a blog format, Emuparadise is changing. This is just a small portion of it. If you want to read the whole thing, you can go on the website yourself. They said it's not worth it for us to risk potentially disastrous consequences. I cannot in good conscience risk the future of our team members who have contributed to the site through the years. We run Emuparadise for the love of retro games and for you to revisit these good times. Unfortunately, it's not possible right now to do so in a way that makes everyone happy and keeps us out of trouble.
So basically what they're saying is that they've got companies coming after them, and rightly so.
Or they see the smoke coming, right?
You can still go to the website right now, and the entire organizational structure of the website is still up and running. You just can't download anything. If you go to the site, you can go to PlayStation 2 ROMs or ISOs right now, and you can actually download, you could have downloaded stuff like Resident Evil 4. Right. Now look, I get it. For retro games, there's a bunch of older games that simply don't have the viability to be expanded upon or shared. The companies have gone away. There's some really good websites that exist out there that deal with abandonware, right? So stuff that just doesn't have a home anymore, stuff that doesn't have a way to be resold or redistributed. So underdogs and stuff like that. There are sites like that, and they're very important. Emuparadise had some of that, but a bulk of what they had were things that were still being actively sold, and they were just illegally distributing it.
That's right. Yeah, and I think most of the traffic that goes to these websites, I mean, it was probably people downloading things that are still available in one form or another. You kind of touched on abandonware, but for me, like, the importance of websites historically kind of having these informations available for people is that there are some games that were produced, they weren't abandoned, they weren't, shells of a game, incomplete, that we probably won't ever see again. Like the Adventures of Lomax for PS1. Like we're never going to see that on another platform, most likely.
Yeah.
So what do you do? What do you do in that use case? If you want to buy a copy of that right now used, you're going to be spending like $130 American.
It's true.
For a PS1 game.
Snatcher's a great example. I know I always bring up Snatcher, but Snatcher on the Sega CD only had one version of it released in North America, and that's an incredibly hard version to get.
Yeah, you want to buy that right now? I hope you have about, $700, $600 in your pocket?
It's a little insane, but that's one of the problems, right? These sites should exist for the idea of console games that have gone abandoned and unloved and uncared for, and are incredibly impossible, if not difficult, but if not impossible to find, right? So there is that concern there for a lot of people, and I do understand that concern. It's just, there should be, I don't think Emuparadise would have dealt with such a blowback from companies. We assume it's Nintendo. We do not know for certain. We just, considering the case of the other two websites, we just assume it is. One of the problems is that they didn't just focus on those hard-to-find, obscure games that are not being taken care of. They focused on everything, right?
Because you can go to these websites most of the time and go to their hottest ROMs or whatever, and the list is almost always 20 Nintendo games.
Yes, right. If you go to the website right now, you can look at their GameCube stuff and you can see Melee was right at the top.
Yeah.
Right? People are downloading the Melee ROMs. And do you honestly, or ISOs, do you honestly think Nintendo likes that? And then what makes it worse with Emuparadise and sites like that was there was lots of advertising. There was lots of ways for them to make money and a profit from it, which is something that you definitely shouldn't be doing when distributing these things.
It's good that you bring that up too, because when Nintendo did go after Love ROMs and Love Retro, part of the suit that they were filing was telling them that they had to show them their numbers, advertising, basically all the money that was coming in and going out from the websites as well. So Nintendo, they want to know exactly what's going on and maybe seek further financial sort of gain from that.
Yeah, I mean, but rightly so,
it's their intellectual property,
right? I mean, now here's the thing, right? If this had just happened with games from a platform that doesn't exist anymore, I honestly don't think people would have cared that much. We're talking about Philips CDI stuff, even though there are a couple of Nintendo titles on that. We're talking about games...
Nintendo wants to forget about those anyway.
But we're talking about games on platforms that simply did not have a chance. The companies evaporated. In many cases, the ownership of these companies have been passed along from parent parent company to parent company, where they simply don't care about what they own, and there's no incentive for them to re-release stuff into the future, which is why you've been seeing that kind of scene grow out of the PC market. GOG.com has done a great service to people, bringing older games back and giving you a very easy downloadable package to actually play them in. That being said, though, we don't see that a lot with console games because a lot of console game manufacturers don't seem to care. Sega recently has been a lot better with re-releasing older video games. The Sega Genesis collection that they did recently is a fantastic collection. Great emulator built into it.
But no matter what, there's always going to be gaps.
There is,
right? Where you're always going to be losing games and things. And I want to see a way of being able to have that information and have those media titles like available for people. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like an emulation website. But we do historically like need to preserve these things, or else we're going to lose media. It's like whenever I hear about things like this or talk about this, it's like hearing about old literature that's been lost or old film that's been lost. Like this is just as important as far as I'm concerned.
So I have an idea.
Let's start an emulation website.
I have an idea. Basically, there was this moment where there was a lot of digital music being downloaded once upon a time with things like Napster and Kazaa and LimeWire and all these other things. BearShare. These weird programs, a lot of them offered incredibly easy ways to get infected with viruses on your computer to a shocking degree. But Napster was very well known for being the premier music digital download service for a long time.
They were the first really big.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Now, think about this. This is basically the same problem. You have a whole bunch of people distributing ISOs, and no matter what Nintendo or any of these companies do, there's always going to be these packages available online, whether they be through torrents or even really old worlds that are still active, like IRC and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that takes me back.
So what I'm thinking is that these companies get together and they form some kind of collective, some kind of group where they basically sell the ROM files online. Now, if you have a digital storefront where people can buy these ROM files, they can store them away just like MP3s or M4A files and stuff like that and keep them in their collection. Or work together to make some kind of digital streaming service for video games so people don't have to go out and hunt for these things. As long as there's some way to actually have those files available, believe me, I know this sounds like a little bit of a backward thing as we're going more to a streaming future, but the idea of that being able to download ROM files from a collective database would make a lot of sense because some of these parent companies will be like, yeah, we're just sitting on this stuff. Right. Nobody wants this. Sure, just put it on there if anyone wants to buy.
And even some of these titles, though, it's been so long, and the rights to some games have been juggled around so much that no one knows who actually owns the rights. Like, remember System Shock? There were some issues with System Shock at first because it was like almost lost. So, some things just get tossed around so much. It becomes convoluted.
It is true, right? And for those special case files, these websites will always exist. What I'm talking about are the larger assets, right? It's the collective of people out there that are those larger groups of games. Like, it should be so easy for all the Ultimate games to be available in a digital package, and they are on GOG.com. So to offer something like that, in fact, GOG.com. If anyone from GOG is watching, this would be a great way. GOG.com already offers DRM-free downloads for video games from PC Past, so to be able to download those DRM-free packages that you can keep on a hard drive somewhere and never worry about it going out of date or anything like that, it would be fantastic if they offered ROMs the same way. And maybe they have some kind of emulation front layer or something like that, some bulk thing, or maybe they work out some kind of deal with the folks that do those kind of things. It would
be so difficult, especially if you're dealing with Nintendo properties, right?
I'm not saying Nintendo. Specifically, Nintendo, clearly not the company to do this. I'm talking about Sega. I'm talking about classic game companies like Activision. I'm talking about, stuff like that.
Yeah, but there are some Sega-owned titles that may be lost to time as well.
It's true.
Which is scary.
But just the idea that this could exist, right? Like an official source.
Totally.
I think that is the best way,
I just want to find kind of a blanket way so that everyone can go to the library of games online and be like, oh, okay, we can see how things were made so that we can help educate ourselves in the future while making games, or just historically take in what games were like in the past. I feel like
honestly, I feel like the idea to go get rid of
you're trying to be realistic.
I'm trying to be realistic, and at the same time, I think the folks that are going after Emuparadise have to be realistic. this doesn't stop here. You will never clear the internet of ROMs.
Well,
you waited way too long. It's been almost 20 years.
That's what I was going to say. So speaking of being realistic, there's going to be 3 more sites popping up where every one site is taken down. It's the exact same as like torrent websites, for example. You can take one down, and then a bunch of others will pop up, and then there's a good chance that that initial site, like Pirate Bay, will pop back up again anyway.
Yeah.
But
it's just a randomly distributed mess, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why this became so prevalent was because the video game industry had no real idea of how to preserve older video games for the longest time, so consumers took it upon themselves. Now, I believe that if you own a game, you should be able to back it up and keep a digital file yourself. I've always believed that because I feel it's the safest way to keep those games alive. But I really felt for a while there, and I've made a video about this way in the past, back when Rerez started, where I firmly believed that emulation was a very important facet, and it was really the only way to keep some of these games alive. And the community has consistently proved that they can do that. So instead of suing folks that are distributing these games or saving these games and collecting them, why not hire them to build this network for you to make this stuff happen? I think that would have a far better impact.
I don't know, man. There's so many cogs that need to spin to get something like that in order. A lot of people have to come together, you know?
Yeah, it probably was very difficult for them to find out who owned Emuparadise to send them a cease and desist in the mail, too. But you know what? They found a way, so I'm pretty sure if they just worked a little bit harder...
So what? But you're asking for Nintendo... If you're talking about Nintendo specifically...
Not Nintendo specifically.
Well, you said Emuparadise, and the one company that would be attacking them would be Nintendo.
Right? I mean, but Sega, all those companies, right? They still exist, and I think
know.
they could do
I'm just
something better.
saying getting them to mesh together and work together might be difficult. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yes, it's true. But, folks, what do you think? Do you think that stuff like this could be happening in the future where we see some kind of digital distribution network that deals with ROMs directly served in a DRM-free method?
So. Like I said, it sounds impossibly difficult, but I want it.
Yeah. Or do you think this is the end of emulation and ROMs online? Probably not going to happen. But let us know what you think.